Early in the morning of August 3rd, I found myself standing on Platform 1 at the local train station and ready for the first of 3 trains that I was going to take that day. 3 trains in a bus line that would eventually drop me off at the Sherwood Forest Visitor Centre, just outside the village of Edwinstowe in Nottinghamshire. Upon arrival, I donned my green pointed cap, bedecked with a single pheasant feather, and joined the crowds who had gathered at the edge of Sherwood Forest to experience the Robin Hood Festival. Over the next 2 days, I would interact with musicians, comedians, knife throwers, falconeers, storytellers, puppeteers, herbalists, blacksmiths, woodworkers, jousters, and other visitors to the forest, who were there to enjoy the shows, learn from the reenactors, and appreciate being in the legendary home of everyone's favorite outlaw hero. Welcome to the Greenwood. I'm your host, Thaddeus Papke, and this is the podcast where we peek under the hood of the most famous outlaw who may have never been. From archers to archaeologists, we interview subject matter experts and content creators to learn why this figure continues to endure and consider what we can learn by examining what historian Maurice Keene called the matter of the Greenwood. Joining me in the Greenwood today is Rob James, a man who is no stranger to the actual Greenwood in his role as the communications officer for the Sherwood Forest and Budby South Forest and Nature Reserves. It's Rob's responsibility to help organize and promote the annual Robin Hood Festival in Sherwood Forest. During the course of our discussion, we go over some of the practical advice related to attending the Robin Hood Festival and some details relating to the theme weekends, as well as the unique opportunities that are presented by hosting the festival in Sherwood itself, and how the forest is incorporated into the festival experience. We also get into some details about Sherwood Forest, the unique character of its ancient oaks, and how processes like veterinization are helping fill an important ecological gap in the forest. So, string your bow, don your Robin Hood hat, and head towards the festival in the forest as we enter the Greenwood with RSPB Communications Officer Rob James. So I am here with Rob James. Rob, could you describe a little bit of what your role is with the RSPB, with Sherwood Forest, and the Robin Hood Festival?
Absolutely. So my name's Rob James. I'm Communications Officer for the RSPB at Sherwood Forest and Budby South Forest, which is an immediately adjoining nature reserve here in Nottinghamshire. And the Robin Hood Festival is an annual celebration of the legend, and it's, I suppose, the era that it's associated with, that medieval era. And it's been now celebrated in Sherwood for getting on for 4 decades. So it's brilliant to be a part of. It's well loved by visitors from all around the world, and we really look forward to the summer when we can celebrate this brilliant cultural legacy of Sherwood Forest.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So this is my first summer living in the UK, and I was happy that at the beginning of the month I got to pop over to Nottingham and then from there take the Sherwood Arrow bus to the Sherwood Forest Visitor Center and explore the festival myself during its first weekend, so it's a 4-weekend festival that basically runs through August. Is that correct?
Correct. So many years ago, it would have been run in one 7-day stretch, but we have in recent years run it over the 4 weekends of August. For a number of reasons, really. 7 days was really quite intense for the performers, for staff and volunteers, but also it means that if you're, for whatever reason, you're on holiday and you really like the Robin Hood Festival and you're unable to go that week because you booked your holiday, there's always something to look forward to in August. So if you weren't able to see the Knights of Nottingham medieval jousting display team on the first weekend, you can catch the Sherwood Outlaws on the bank holiday weekend at the end of the festival month. So it's great to be able to offer something throughout the month. And I think it's been proven by people's response to it and the fact that they certainly the first two weekends of this year have been really, really popular. And we're
Excellent.
really, really delighted. And still two more weekends to go.
Yeah, so it's running over these 4 weekends, and you mentioned the joust that was on the first weekend. The last weekend will have a storyline that involves the outlaws, but the other weeks also have different themes. So this past week was a fantasy theme, right?
Correct. So, yes, the first weekend, the headline show was the Knights of Nottingham medieval jousting display team doing a twice daily arena. It was a two-part story. So it was always, if you saw part one in the morning, you needed to come back for part two because it's how see how the story unfolded. But we had lots and lots of other things going on besides that. We had falconry, we had historical reenactment with the Ferris household, who brilliant at recreating that spirit of that 15th century. So that era when the ballads and the legends were really taking hold in amongst the British population, who were becoming enchanted and captivated by the deeds of Robin Hood. But
Hmm.
it gives you a great social context to understand how people were living and how volatile a time it was, because there were series of civil war battles through the Wars of the Roses at that time. So for many common people, it would have been a very, very unstable and unsettling time. But at the same time, very resourceful. And it's great to be able to show the skills of that period, as well as just talk about the battles. So how people really lived. And so the Ferris household and other reenactors that we've had, in fact, we had a Wars of the Roses weekend back in June. And it's just brilliant. The attention to detail in the costume,
Yeah.
in the in the accessories and the tools and the artifacts. It's phenomenal. These people are really dedicated and devoted people to this era of history. So that's a key part of it. We have lots of other things besides storytelling, medieval music, activities. So loads and loads of great things that really evoke that whole era of the foundation of the Robin Hood legend, if you like.
Right.
The
And I
second
think that's
weekend,
an important note. So it's not trying to so much recreate what you see in Hollywood, but more of King Richard and Prince John, but more of the later Middle Ages when the stories would have been told, when everybody would have been familiar with the tales of Robin Hood.
absolutely. As I say, understanding the context in which people were living their lives, understanding the volatility, the battles between various, families and nobles. It's a really key element to understanding why the tales of Robin Hood and the deeds of Robin Hood ballads would become so popular. I guess there was many opportunities to be very unhappy about your situation, and in terms of how those in authority and power were maybe, I suppose, exercising that power. And for a common man whose priority was to get his family through each day, it really was survival. To have a folk hero that you could sort of relate to and I suppose be hopeful that if someone was out there fighting your corner. I think it's a really important context in which, we can set the legends of Robin Hood. Clearly, there are many different interpretations of the ballads in different ways. You've mentioned Hollywood. I mean, there are so many films that have been made, not just in Hollywood, but right around the world, TV series, which did their own job of telling the story. And yeah, the live performance, the jousting, really, really spectacular, fabulous equestrian skills, combat, an understanding of the weaponry of the time and combat techniques.
Hmm.
When the Sherwood Outlaws visit on the last weekend, they're very much a combat display. What they don't know about weaponry of that period isn't worth knowing. So that expertise feeds into the performance. The performance is there to entertain as well. So there'll be drama, there'll be comedy, there'll be all these things that just entertain us. And it's a brilliant way as well of getting people to not only come to Sherwood for that element, that the legend element, but being in a place which is really important for nature. I mean, this
Yeah.
is an ancient woodland. It's an internationally significant area. of ancient oak wood pasture. There's very few places like it left in Europe. So, in
Right.
a
And I
sense, Robin Hood is the gateway for many people to come and experience this really special place for wildlife.
Yeah, I wanted to throw a highlight on that. I mentioned that this past weekend was the sort of fantasy themed weekend where there are
Yes,
things related to Tolkien and to The Witcher and other sort of fantasy properties. But this upcoming weekend is really putting a lens on the nature and conservation work that is done there, right?
absolutely. If you like, I'll just backtrack a little bit and talk about the fancy weekend because we've just had that.
Sure.
If that's okay. So, yeah, I mean, people might say, well, what does Tolkien have to do with Robin Hood? What do orcs have to do with Robin Hood? And it's really about the fact that we're captivated by stories and legends. And obviously, Robin Hood is based around those ballads and stories that we've come to love over the centuries. Those legends would have inspired people like Tolkien to create whole worlds, create new
I
creatures, new characters.
I have to say that walking around in Sherwood Forest and going on the walk of giants and seeing the ancient oaks and seeing how much character each of those ancient oaks has, how much each one feels like it has a personality, that more than anything else has made the Ents from Tolkien's work feel like they're real. You could really see how Tolkien, who, lived in England, would have gotten his inspiration for something like that.
Absolutely. It really is a magical place. And I'm glad you've highlighted that, Eric, because it's a very short walk from this visitor centre when you arrive to find some incredible trees that, as you say, we sometimes overuse the word character when we're describing our trees, but there's no other convincing way of describing them. Each of them does have their own distinct visual personality, but also they'll have that personality in the way they grow and the way they manifest, their leaves every year. And there are lots of other factors affecting it. Clearly, climate is a big factor in the way that our trees respond each year, and that's something that we're working hard to try and counteract in the work that we do to support the trees and tree health. But yeah, once you get out of the forest, you can be absolutely mesmerized by the shapes, the features. It almost feels like they are living and breathing and watching you. They are living and breathing, but it's almost like they're
Right.
enjoying being in that forest, in that landscape with you, and they can feel that enjoyment from you as well. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. I'm starting to ramble a little bit here. I'm
Yeah.
getting very lyrical, but that's how I feel when I walk around. There are so many beautiful trees beyond the major oak, for example, that
Hmm. That one
many
gets the
visitors will.
headlines, but there's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always encourage people to take, the slightly longer trails around because they'll see some incredible, incredible trees. But
Hmm.
yeah, even close at hand, you mentioned the Giants Trail, beautiful trees on there too. A couple that I've invented my own names for because they just are crying out. There's a lot of trees that are named out
Right.
there. There's Rotten Roger, there's Cyril, there's a bee tree, the maybe there's lots of reasons why they've been given those names. But you know, there's trees out there that I see that think that deserves a name. So I've got my own names for them, that kind of thing. And I think everybody can do the same. And
Yeah.
that character speaks to you, and it almost says, "Name me," because you can feel that personality in that character.
A couple of
Oh,
years ago, I had Andrew West on the podcast, and we were
oh
talking
yes,
about his favorite trees in Sherwood. And he said that his favorite was one that he called Medusa.
yes,
Yeah. So
yeah.
do you have a favorite?
I do, I do. I mean, Medusa is incredible. I don't know if you managed to see it when you were on your walk around Sherwood.
On a
It's
previous trip, I've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you can see instantly why people call it Medusa. Other people call it the cauldron tree, which tells
Hmm.
me that, people have got different interpretations of trees. So another example of that, right behind the major oak is, and just beyond a stile, is one that I call the giant squid. And the
Hmm.
reason I do that is because A, it's giant, and B, it's got these two bulbous parts that are level, equidistant around each side to look like two huge eyes.
Hmm.
And you can always feel like it rising out of the ocean. And to me, that just all those sort of like you think about all those sorts of science fiction, Jules Verne and that kind of thing, and
Right.
about the incredible creatures of the sea that he imagined. And for me, that's what it evokes. But obviously, it's a tree in a woodland,
Hmm.
not in an ocean at all. But
Rising up from
giant,
the ferny depths of the forest floor.
absolutely, yeah. And there's another one on the Giants Trail, which I actually call the toy tree. And the reason I call it that is because it's almost so perfect in its features and characterization that you can imagine Fisher Price or the makers of plastic toys when I
Mm.
was growing up in the 80s, making something of that ilk with all those features, like a little owl hole, a strip of the bark missing to expose the heartwood. It's almost
Hmm.
too. Yeah, if you were to design the perfect ancient oak, that would be it.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It's not the biggest, probably not the oldest, but it's got all the features in one place. I really love that. So yeah, lots and lots of trees out there. But I mean, with the fancy weekend, we really wanted to obviously we want to offer something new. I mean, people do want to come back. They want to see the performers they love, and they will get to see them. But it's great to introduce something new and a little bit different, get people thinking. We're reaching new audiences. So, for example, we had the cinema weekend just before the festival proper got underway. So, right at the end of July. And the first film we showed, and this was by popular vote, was The Lord of the Rings, the first of the trilogy, The Fellowship of the Ring. And well over 200 people attended that screening. And it shows the popularity, obviously,
Yeah.
of obviously Tolkien, but clearly the opportunity, the experience to watch a film like that, which is so imbued in its I suppose its landscapes of dramatic landscapes, whether it be the high mountains of the Southern Alps in New Zealand as it was, or in the deep dark forests. To see it in a similar sort of setting, the forest setting, I suppose for people really enhances that whole experience.
Hmm. Yeah.
So moving on to this week ahead, yeah,
Right.
we are focusing on the natural history of Sherwood very much. It's a weekend that really celebrates the fact that there are lots of organisations, including the RSPB, who are working so hard to preserve, to protect, and to enhance wildlife and nature throughout Nottinghamshire. So we'll be working with the local Beekeepers Association, we'll work with the Bat Group, the Fungi Group, we'll have Notts Wildlife Trust, we'll have the Animal Sciences Department of Nottingham Trent University there as well, Butterfly Conservation. So loads of brilliant, brilliant organisations that work so hard in their respective fields to raise awareness of the threat to many of these species, but also what people can do to understand them, to appreciate them, and to try and provide or at least protect the habitats that exist to
Hmm.
support those different species. Because it really, I mean, everybody, wherever we live, if we look close enough, there is an abundance of wildlife, but there are, again, lots and lots of threats and limitations imposed on that wildlife. The way we change the use of land, it may be, you know, a land is given over to residential use or industrial use, and that would have been a beautiful place for pollinators, of all
Yeah.
kinds to inhabit. Clearly, as those land uses change, that reduces the amount of land available for those creatures to really, find a habitat, a sanctuary. And that's what Sherwood is, and Bugby South Forest is as well, along with other sites throughout the county. And without the support of these many different groups, let's say, it would be a case of very much more difficult challenge to raise awareness of the importance of wildlife throughout the county and those habitats as well.
Right. And I have to say, that's one of the things that I've always appreciated the couple of times I've gotten to go to Sherwood Forest there. What drew me there was being a Robin Hood fan and wanting some kind of Robin Hood experience. But I've really appreciated how much the beauty and importance of the forest and conservation hasn't been lost there. And that if you don't care at all about Robin Hood, you can just have a wonderful experience exploring these woods and learning about them, learning about the local ecosystem, learning about how these trees serve as habitats for many different creatures, learning about what the different local wildlife is, the local birds, learning about the how to identify the local bird sound. The last time I was there, I learned just through some of the signage, things I never knew before, like about the veterinization of some of the younger growth trees to help promote them to be like older growth trees and make the reclaimed forest function more like the old growth forest. And so getting to learn more about that environment and how it has changed and how it is sort of being the active conservation work that's going on there is something that I have really noticed and appreciated, and I think others would too if they visited Sherwood Forest.
And that's fantastic. That's what we want people to experience. It's that appreciating that time spent in nature. For those that have come for Robin Hood, have a real sense that they've been in the home of the legend, but understanding that actually it really is an important place for nature. And if you can go away feeling that you have not only learned a bit more about Robin Hood, maybe, but you've learned a bit more about why it is a special place for nature, that's fantastic from our perspective. Hopefully that will draw you back, because there are lots of it's not the largest reserve, it's
No.
450 acres. There's another 450 at Budby, but you can explore it many times and still not see all of it.
Right.
And I hope it draws people back because they're inspired by that, but also inspired by the fact that it is this sanctuary for nature, and that people are working very hard to ensure that wildlife there has a home, in an area which is, for good, I suppose, reasons of economy and society, that has seen a lot of land usage change over the years through coal mining, through agriculture, through other forms of industry. But because of that, those connections between those different pockets of what would at one time have been a 100,000 acre forest from Nottingham stretching northward is now just, as I say, just pockets of a few hundred acres apiece. So what we're looking to do is obviously make people understand that where they are is a really significant place. It's the home for species that are found in very few places elsewhere, such as the saprozoic invertebrates, which depend so heavily on the decaying wood environment that the ancient oaks provide. And also understanding the challenges that we face. I mean, you mentioned veteranization. I mean, the reason for veteranization is a way of trying to bridge that generation gap that we have between very old oak trees and much younger oak trees. And that middle age has been removed through shipbuilding, that the need for timber for construction, a few centuries ago. And now we're picking up the challenge of that. So we have to try and bring the reserve to a point where it has a natural succession. So as ancient oaks do die, and they will, even in death, they still provide that important habitat because the decaying wood remains. But we still need to have that succession of ancient oaks and veteran oaks coming through. So yeah, we have been quite radical and pioneering in that respect in terms of using a technique like veteranization, which has become something that developed in Europe around 20 years ago. And it's used in other parts of the UK as well. If you watch the Spring Watch series and Autumn Watch series, you would have seen articles on it in the past. We've been featured in national media as well, talking about why we do it. It is a challenging, I suppose, a challenging concept to try and describe to people because it has deliberate damage being inflicted. But actually, there's a very important ecological purpose to it.
And so just real quick, just like to try to describe it to audience members, because since we threw out the term a little bit, it is this process in which you are deliberately damaging some of the trees.
Yeah, I mean, it's called, in a sense, habitat pruning. So, whereas you would occasionally with trees anyway, take some actions like you may reduce the size of a crown, for example, to try and create more light and space for an ancient oak. All this is about trying to create the perfect or improve the conditions, the natural of the environment in the forest. So it's as I say, it's very detailed, it's very carefully planned with a very real and purpose that we are monitoring. So we've gone out earlier this year to look at some of those trees that were veteranized 4 years ago, and we're seeing evidence there of the kind of colonization that we were looking for. So those invertebrates are inhabiting those trees earlier than they would have done had they not been veteranized, for example. There's evidence of other organisms like fungi and slime molds on those trees as well. Again, probably at an earlier stage than it would have been had they not been veteranized. It's a very clear purpose. Like
and that's a positive thing. This is part of the ecosystem for these forests, that there are these habitats for these molds and fungus and invertebrates.
Yeah, absolutely. And we we will continue to monitor this as carefully and as in as much detail as we possibly can as part of the
Hmm.
work. But it's just one of a number of sort of methods that we use to create the ideal conditions to maintain the presence of the ancient oaks that we have for as long as we can, and to ensure that longevity is supported by that progression through of new veterans and ancients, those younger trees that
Right.
are heading towards that veteran ancient stage. So that
Yeah.
eco cycle that has been there for millennia, for as long as it's been an ancient woodland, continues
Hmm.
for centuries to come.
Yeah, so just as an example of one of these types of veterinization, I took a photo one of the last times I was in Sherwood of where a tree had been scored down the middle. I don't know if it was with axes or chainsaws or what. I posted this photo on Facebook and I forgot to caption it because I was intrigued by this veterinization process, but I forgot to caption this photo. And somebody immediately commented about like, oh, look at the lightning strike on that tree, which provided the opportunity to say, oh, well, actually, that wasn't a lightning strike. It is an artificial lightning strike. It is the scoring of the tree as if it had been struck by lightning.
And that's done through very skilled work by arborists who understand the natural processes. They understand clearly, they understand the anatomy of trees intimately
Yeah,
to
don't do
know
this at
where they
home.
can have where they can recreate those elements of natural occurrences. And they do it with chainsaws. And at the start, it can look quite raw and very fresh in terms of wound, but it very quickly weathers uh, and almost becomes unnoticeable.
Hmm.
Um, but the important point is that, as I say, it's all done for a very deliberate purpose, and that purpose is to have that succession, to
Yep.
sustain the ancients that we have for as long as possible, and to bring those younger trees through to that ancient and veteran stage, certainly in terms of colonization by invertebrates, sooner, so we can sustain that eco cycle.
Just to sort of kind of bridge the gap between this discussion about Sherwood Forest to the festival, I've attended many Renaissance festivals and medieval festivals in the United States. I used to work in a few, and what really struck me as a really unique component of the Robin Hood Festival was that utilization of Sherwood. There is this sort of open green space by the visitor center, which is what you see when you first arrive. But then, in order to really explore and experience the festival, in order to see those people with their little kind of not quite a village, but a bunch of tents with workshops set up, woodworking and
Yeah,
blacksmithing and leechcraft and all sorts of stuff in order to find all of those, to find a puppet theater, to find all sorts of other entertainments, to find storytellers. You actually have to go into the forest. So you kind of leave the immediate fairgrounds, and to get the full experience of the Robin Hood Festival, you have to go out into the forest. And I thought that was part of what made it feel extra special and unique. And I just wondered if you wanted to say anything about that utilization of the forest, of kind of incorporating the
yeah,
major oak, incorporating Sherwood into the festival grounds.
absolutely. I mean, there is no point. I mean, one of the great advantages we have, of course, of having the Robin Hood Festival at Sherwood is this is where the legend originated. This is the landscape that inspired the legend. So we have that to our advantage first, but we're not complacent about that. We don't want to bring is people to a venue and it be a completely static experience. Of course, the great advantage we have, especially compared with other events, is that we are Sherwood Forest. This is the place that inspired the legend. It's the space that people associate around the world with Robin Hood. And there would be little point in inviting people along and holding everything in one place on the edge of the forest. We need them to go out in there. We need them to
Mhm.
understand and enjoy and really see for themselves the landscape that inspired such incredible and enduring legends and ballads. And what we find generally is that one of the best ways of talking to people about legends and the history of the forest is to take them out there. So we do costume storytelling tours anyway, which start from the visitor centre and then make their way into the forest. So you're out amongst the ancient oaks when you're learning about Robin Hood. So rather than having an indoor museum space, fairly sterile space with lots of information that you can read at your leisure, we think it's better to be interactive and to
Hmm.
actually explore the forest with someone who understands the forest and
Yeah.
knows the legends. So we would do that anyway, most weekends. So when they come for the festival, we want them to have a reason for going into the forest. So yeah, that green space near the visitor centre is perfect for lots and lots of entertainment. We have our amphitheatre right outside the cafe, which is great for those performances, maybe by children's entertainers and a magician. Then you
Yeah.
go out
I
to
saw
we've
a
got the
knife
trade village.
thrower there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was a new one for this year as well. So that was really entertaining. Yeah, so then you got the Trader Village on the green, and then you get to the arena. So you've got that great space for jousting, and will be obviously where the combat display will be for the Sherwood Outlaws. This weekend we had it for the workshops that the witches and the orcs were leading as well. It's a great space there. But then we want people to go up to, most people want to come to Sherwood Forest again to see the Major Oak. So
Hmm.
Major Green is a great space for having axe throwing, archery, but all kinds of events. So we'll have a smaller tent there that will have performance. We'll have musicians. We'll have the reenactors. We'll have comedians when the medieval maniacs are back at the end of the month. Everybody loves the medieval maniacs. So we sort of encourage people to move towards the Major Oak and then move around the Major Oak Trail where they'll find you say the puppet show, we'll have storytelling, have games, and then it brings you back round very nicely back to the main visit centre and the event screen there. So it's about exploring. It's
Hmm.
about just understanding with us. It's very carefully organised, very carefully timed, so that you can get to see those performances up at the Major Oak and also at the visitor screen, and everything in between. Visitor experience team have done a great job working with our outdoors team, making some of the glades more amenable for performance. So, as you're walking down some Major Oak, there's a glade on your right hand side, and you'll have storytellers in there. You'll have willow weaving. We've had blacksmith forges in there. We'll have
Yeah.
musicians, and then down at Major Oak Green, as you saw on the first weekend, it's almost transformed into this Tudor time village.
Hmm.
Um,
Right.
and yeah, it's utilizing the space as much as we can. Obviously, timing the event so everybody's got an opportunity to see absolutely everything that's on during hopefully the 6 hours or so that they're there. But importantly, they've been out, they've felt very much as though it's enhanced the atmosphere by being out in the forest, appreciating the beauty of the landscape around them, seeing some of those amazing character trees, having a lot of fun while they're doing it.
Right. And I will make sure that I get this episode out for the podcast feed in this next week. So if anybody wants to attend this next weekend, that's all about nature conservation and wildlife appreciation, they'll be aware of that, or the Return of the Outlaws weekend that's happening at the very end of the month. So, what do people need to know if they want to attend either of these weekends, or if they miss them and want to come next year? How does somebody get to the festival? What do they need to know?
Okay. Well, the first thing I'm going to recommend is that they go to our website, visit sherwood.co.uk, and one of the first things they'll see on the homepage is the link to the festival, and that's got all the information on there. So it's important to know that on certain dates, there is a special event parking charge. It's £15 per car. So you can bring a car full of family and friends. If you've bought a car of five, it's £3 each,
Mhm.
and then you can have an amazing day seeing lots and lots of brilliant, brilliant performers.
Right. So there's a
Um,
parking charge, but there's no admission charge.
there's no admission charge, so you can walk on to reserve free of charge. There's also a free bus service every Saturday and Sunday this month, thanks to a partnership involving Stagecoach, the operator, with Nottinghamshire County Council and Nottingham City Council. And the bus stops at the visitor centre completely free of charge between Nottingham. Stopping at the visitor centre goes on to Worksop. So if you can pick the bus up on that route, brilliant. Sherwood Arrow, brilliant, brilliant
Hmm.
initiative that you can travel for free. So we try and make it as accessible as possible, but clearly we have to have some form of charging because this is an event which does carry a significant cost to organise, and we want people to enjoy it, as many people to enjoy it as possible. We feel we provide excellent value for the charge that we do make. But yeah, so go to our website, make sure you're clear about those dates. Actually, this weekend for the Nature Weekend, it's our normal parking charges. So it's £5 per vehicle per day for non-RSPB members. and it's free for RSPB members. So the special event parking charge does not apply on the weekend of the 17th and 18th of August. It does apply again on the bank holiday weekend, where we'll have the amazing Sherwood Outlaws doing their arena show on the Saturday and the Monday. It's slightly different on the Sunday because we're also celebrating Nottinghamshire Day with the county council. We've also got on the Sunday and the Monday the return of the Medieval Maniacs. I've already mentioned them. Brilliant, brilliant comedy show. Attract hundreds and hundreds of people every time. And actually on the Sunday evening, we've got a special event that we've not had for a couple of years, which is an evening spectacular with a lot of the performers that we have at that weekend working on a show together, which is a brilliant, brilliant event. That's a bookable event, so you do need to book tickets for that, and they're selling out quite quickly. So that's on the Sunday evening.
And all of that's on the website. Visit
That's on the
Sherwood.
website, yeah. So all the information you need is at visitsherwood.co.uk. We've also got a Facebook page just called Robin Hood Festival that you can get lots of information on. But there are lots and lots of helpful promotional sites, such as Visit Nottinghamshire, which have done great work to help to promote the festival with all the details and the necessary links. And of course, if people have got any questions, they can always email us, sherwoodevents@rspb.org.uk, or call us 01623 677 321. So lots and lots of ways that you can research the event before you come. So, but if you do turn up, just on the off chance, you're gonna have a brilliant, brilliant time.
Yep. So one other thing that some friends of mine in the States were excited about for your festival, they couldn't attend, but they really liked the shirt designs that they saw advertised on Instagram. So when
Yes.
I attended at the beginning of the month, I had to go pick up basically a bag full of shirts that I'm going to bring to friends in the US the next time I'm there. Who was
Yeah.
responsible for your shirt design?
I mean, that's just been something I think we've hoped to have for a couple of years now, and it's finally come to fruition. So I think real credit has to go to our visitor experience manager, Jess Mullin, who's worked very hard to get this project off the ground, working very closely with our retail manager, Lauren Hibbert. They've done a great job at making this possible. Yeah, working with colleagues within RSPB more widely. But yeah, we're so chuffed to have those Robin Hood Festival t-shirts and new Sherwood Forest t-shirts as well as tote bags. So it's that kind of merch that we've really wanted to help add that real brilliant souvenir element to the whole experience. So yeah, we're really chuffed to have them this year, and they've gone down really well. So I'm delighted to hear that even though your friends couldn't come, they're going to have a souvenir of the Robin
Yeah.
Hood Festival, and hopefully they'll be able to make it in future years.
Yeah,
Wearing their
they would love
t-shirts,
to. Absolutely. So how long have you been involved with or attended the festival yourself?
So this is my third year. Been with RSPB since 2021. Joined just after the summer in 2021. So, but actually, 21 there was no festival because of lockdown.
Right.
So since then, yeah, this is my third one, and it's got better every year. In terms of numbers, in terms of just the whole. I think the whole offer, the package. I think it's been absolutely fabulous this year, and we're only halfway through. So it's testament to the hard work that goes in from our visitor experience team to pull this all together. We're long months trying to ensure that we've got the right mix of entertainers, that we've got those festival favourites, that we've got something new, something different. It's got that right balance in terms of making sure the event runs smoothly and everybody can get to see everything they want to see. And it also has obviously, that really important connection with nature as well.
Yeah.
So hats off to them. They work really hard on that. My job is trying to make sure that as many people as possible know that it's happening. We've had lots of good media interest this year. We've had good media interest in previous years, but we've been on the World at One on Radio 4. We've had interest from BBC Five Live, of course, our regional broadcasters as well. Some national print and online coverage too. So we're getting the word out there. We're trying to reach new people who've never experienced the Robin Hood Festival. We want more and more of them to come along and see what it's
Yeah.
all about and spend some time with us.
Like I said, this was the first summer I've been living in the UK, but I did visit before, and my first trip to Sherwood Forest was in 2021. So there was no Robin Hood Festival then. So this year I was a little bit blindsided, like, what? Robin Hood Festival? What? What's happening? There wasn't anything when I was there before. But yeah,
Yeah.
of course that makes sense.
Um,
So with your, whether it was from this year or previous years, I was curious if you had a favorite moment, anything that really has stood out to you, as like, wow, this was such a wonderful opportunity, a wonderful show, a wonderful, I don't know, scene that you got to experience.
yeah, I think it would have to go some way to top the way that we finished last year's festival, which was two of our performers had a wedding.
Mm.
And this is Mark, one of the medieval maniacs, and Helena, who is part of Helter Skelter Arts, who provide a lot of our circus skills workshops. You might have seen the castle cleaners welcoming you with their feather dusters. Helena is
Hmm.
one of those characters, and they had been involved with the festival for very many years, and they decided it would be a perfect place for them to get married. Now, I'm saying this sort of slightly reservedly because actually we don't have a license for weddings at Sherwood, so it wasn't a proper wedding as such. But for us, the
Yeah.
ceremony was all important. It was beautiful. Mark sang, played guitar. No prizes for guessing what he sang, but it was the theme tune to Prince of Thieves. So, and he did it beautifully. But there were hundreds and hundreds of people there, and it was a beautiful moment. All the other performers were there, singing along, shedding a tear. It was just, it would take something to top that moment, I
Yeah.
think. But
Yeah, that sounds really
yeah,
special.
individually, lots of great highlights. But that one, yeah, that was the best.
That's fantastic. When I was there at the beginning of the month, I really enjoyed the joust. I really enjoyed the Ferrers household. There, I enjoyed the storytellers. The single moment that stood out for me was not anything as grand and communal as a wedding. It was just when I was walking through some of the forest trails, and there was lots of other guests around, of course, also exploring and seeing the number of little kids wearing Robin Hood hats and passing this one family where there was a boy, maybe 4 or 5 years old. He had his Robin Hood hat, he had his play sword. His dad had picked up a stick. They were sword fighting, and just hearing this kid in Sherwood Forest wearing his Robin Hood hat saying, "I'm Robin Hood," just that felt like such a beautiful moment in terms of helping bring this legend and this story to people. And it really made me even more appreciate this festival and what it meant to some of the attendees and how it really did bring these legends to, a new generation.
Yeah. Do you know when I took this job, I told friends the number that told me that when they were kids they were absolutely obsessed with Robin Hood was phenomenal, and thought, oh, amazing, that's brilliant. I wonder how it translates today, in the 2020s, and clearly still captivates a whole new generation every time.
Yeah.
The number of children, boys and girls, who love the thought of being Robin Hood, who wearing the hats, firing the arrows. Um,
Hmm.
it captivates. It resonates with generation after generation, and that's why it continues to have its appeal, and Sherwood will continue to have its appeal, and that's why you're getting new versions of Robin Hood, on-screen versions of Robin Hood made every few years because you
Yep.
know filmmakers recognize that. TV
Hmm.
producers recognize that. It's a legend that of all legends. You can talk about we've talked about Lord of the Rings, you can talk about Game of Thrones, and yeah, they're spectacular, but they all hark back in many ways to those legends and ballads which first captivated people in the Middle Ages and have endured. The Victorians were absolutely
Oh
spellbound,
yeah.
when they read
Loved
about,
it.
you know, when I read Sir Walter Scott writing Ivanhoe and characterizing Robin Hood in that, and again, it had a new lease of life. Henry Gilbert's books about Robin Hood as well in that era,
Hmm.
and then clearly throughout the 20th century, the story was made and remade in lots of different formats. The film created the brilliant platform to tell this story in a way that had never been told before, and it told repeatedly, slightly different versions of it, slightly different. But the thing that remains is that Robin Hood as a character, as someone who, I suppose, in a sense, stood up to injustice and authority, but also has that mischievous element to him,
Hmm.
has that
Yeah.
daring element to him,
Trickster.
has the
Yeah, yeah.
skill of being an archer. It all appeals, and it
Hmm.
continues to appeal. And one of the brilliant things for me working there day to day is seeing that children, and it can be from all over the world. Yeah, they want to be Robin Hood, and they
Right.
want to be in the place where Robin Hood was. Fabulous.
So one of the questions I do like to ask everybody when I have them on is, do you have a favorite adaptation of Robin Hood, something that has especially spoken to you, whether it was when you were a child or that you found later as an adult?
I really enjoyed there was a TV series in the UK in the 80s which
Hmm.
had Jason Connery, the son of Sean Connery, as Robin Hood.
Yep, 40th
And
anniversary this year.
indeed, yeah, I think that I was just right. I was about, I was about 9 or 10 there, and really starting to appreciate, that kind of mythology. I very much like fantasy books at that time, and it was very atmospheric. That I liked old Irish and British folk tales as well, and developing an appreciation of the literature that I suppose informed our sort of our well of legends throughout the British Isles, and seeing it translated for me at that time. I mean, you can comment on how great the 80s were at portraying, film and these kind of things of film and TV. But for me at that time, it really evoked the spirit of being an outlaw in a
Right.
deep dark forest, and also challenging those people in authority, because you just get into that age where you're realizing that rules can be a bit restrictive, and while you understand that they're there, you're beginning to question things. So I suppose it was the right age for me, because Robin Hood was about challenge, questioning, and when he felt it was appropriate, taking those deeds and actions to that next step of putting the powers that be in their place. So yeah,
Hmm.
I would say that for me is the one that resonates with me still today.
Fantastic. Yeah.
What about you? What's your favorite adaptation?
Most people don't ask. My favorite is the Errol Flynn film from 1938. That's I grew up with that one, so it definitely got its hooks into me early. But it's so colorful, so fun, brings such a swashbuckling element to it, and that version of Robin Hood is such a larger than life hero. He's got the trickster component. He's got that laughing in the face of his foes, the confidence, but also just so much heart in terms of I'm absolutely going to throw away my nobility. I'm going to throw away my security because I'm going to help people. It manages to balance that like perfect level of this is fun and boisterous, but also seriously meaningful in terms of you should be better, we should be better.
Absolutely, it's almost like perfect casting, isn't it? Do you know at that time, who
Hmm.
else could you think could be that
The roguish element is
rambunctious
certainly there.
snip? Yeah, that rambunctious, rebellious character. Who
Hmm.
better to play Robin Hood then? He was a very tongue-in-cheek. Even at that time, I think they knew it was a very tongue-in-cheek approach to the characterization. Others, and subsequently, have been a bit more earnest. But yeah,
Yeah.
I know why you went for Errol Flynn. It's a brilliant version.
He certainly sorts of sets the model for others to be compared to.
Mm.
It feels very
Definitely.
much like, well, his was very much inspired by Douglas Fairbanks. More than anything, he really set the tone, and everybody that came after Errol Flynn has felt like a reaction to him. Like they are either trying to be him or they're trying to very conscientiously not be him.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's a great benchmark for any actor going forward, isn't it?
Hmm. Hmm. Well, thanks so much for taking some time out of your day to talk to me about the festival and talk to me about
Mm.
working there in Sherwood. Is there any sort of last thing that you want to be able to put out there about the festival and what you're hoping to achieve with it?
I think at the end of the day, the festival has been around for almost 4 decades now. It's become a really important way of celebrating Nottinghamshire's cultural legacy, not just Sherwood's, but Nottinghamshire. Robin Hood is a character which the whole of Nottinghamshire lays claim to, and rightly so. So, from a county-wide and regional perspective, it's a way of asserting our identity by celebrating that
Mhm.
legend. And we have the privilege of being able to do that in the place where the legend was founded and the landscape that inspired it. So I would encourage anybody who has wondered about whether the legend's true or not, come and celebrate it with us anyway. It's a fabulous opportunity, loads of great entertainment, great value, and it's just a brilliant way to spend a summer's day.
Mm-hmm.
More
Absolutely.
than one day if you want to.
Right. Yeah, I did Saturday and Sunday. Did a weekend. Speaking of which, I'm sure I will come back next year. I'm already sort of making my plans around it. Looking forward to it.
Fantastic, fantastic. And hopefully some of your friends from the States can join you in their t-shirts.
That would be wonderful. Yeah. So thanks again for joining. Yeah, it was wonderful to meet you.
And you. Take care, Thaddeus.
Good luck with the rest of the festival.
Thank you.
My thanks again to Rob for joining me to discuss the particulars of the Robin Hood Festival and geek out with me a bit about Robin Hood and the ancient oaks of Sherwood. If you'd like to hear more about Sherwood Forest itself, the diversity of wildlife it contains, and how it has changed over the centuries, then I especially suggest that you listen to episode 15 of the podcast, Exploring Sherwood Forest with Andrew West. Links to the Visit Sherwood website can be found in the episode description if you're thinking about making that trip there yourself. And if you've been to the Robin Hood Festival, or to Sherwood when the forest was festival free, and would like to share your experiences, then I would love to hear about them. You can find Into the Greenwood on most of the major social media platforms, including the site formerly known as Twitter, as well as Threads, Blue Sky, Instagram, and Facebook, all with the handle @IntoGreenwood. You can also reach out directly via email with the address intogreenwood@gmail.com. There's also an active Discord server for all things Robin Hood related, run by friend of the show, Mike Nichols. If you'd like to join that Discord community where we source questions, organize watch parties, play games, have a book club, and just generally engage in friendly discussion, then reach out over email or social media to get an invitation. Into the Greenwood is supported by our amazing and generous followers on Patreon at patreon.com/IntoGreenwood. You can follow for absolutely free or contribute as little as $1 a month to help pay for our hosting fees. Patrons at the Merry Bandit and Notorious Outlaw levels also get bonus content that can include extended interview segments and other special exclusives. These contributions are just barely covering our hosting fees at the moment, which means we're a far ways off from me being able to purchase better equipment, research material, or make compensations for the time required to put these episodes together. If you're willing to make a small one-time contribution towards keeping Into the Greenwood on the air, we also have an account on buymeacoffee.com/IntoGreenwood. Every little bit is greatly, greatly appreciated. And since this whole project is inspired by a forest hero who has become associated with charitable work, no matter how much or how little is contributed to keeping the podcast running, a minimum of 10% of all proceeds will be donated to a select charity. At this time, that charity remains Trees, Water, and People, a top-rated charity dedicated to establishing sustainable access to food and clean water for impoverished communities around the world. And if you're feeling a bit impoverished yourself, just a positive rating or review, or sharing a favorite episode or two would do wonders for helping others out there find the show. As a small independent podcast amid thousands of options out there, it's a real challenge for our little show to break through and gain listeners. So every single rating or share makes a significant impact. Into the Greenwood is produced and edited by me, Thaddeus Papke. Our theme music is by Plastic 3. That's all for now, though. So once again, I find myself wishing safe travels to you, one and all, until our next journey together into the Greenwood.